back to Africa Science Focus. I'm Sally Amutabe. Food security is a major concern for many communities in the region. Over the next 3 episodes, we will be taking a closer look at food production as part of a new miniseries, Agri-Africa. Join us as we dig into the continent's agricultural infrastructure and find out about the local innovations that are helping to make food safer and more accessible. Our reporter Michael Kaloki begins our Agri-Africa series with an investigation of food loss and food waste.
Sometimes when a farmer plants a seed, after a few weeks, months or years, the produce that ends up at the market or on the plate of the consumer may not be what was expected. There has been ongoing concern about food loss in sub-Saharan Africa. Just what is the impact that food loss has on food security on the continent? And what impact has the COVID-19 pandemic had on food security as well?
Worldwide, 1 in every 9 people were facing hunger before the pandemic. In Africa, that number was 1 in 5. The United Nations estimates that another 45 million people in sub-Saharan Africa and Asia became acutely food insecure between February and June last year.
Joseph, you have formulated and led a number of projects on the continent looking at food loss reduction. What is the general state of food loss in sub-Saharan Africa?
So thank you so much, Michael. As you said, my name is Joseph Mpagalile. I'm an agricultural engineer working on sustainable agricultural mechanization with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, and I'm based here in Accra at our regional office for Africa. So I can, briefly say that still the level of food loss is high compared to other regions of the world. So I can say the average global food loss is put at about 14% under the FAO State of Food and Agriculture Report of 2019. So I'll give you an example. For example, in the study that we conducted in Ethiopia, for grains, including maize, beans, and wheat, we found out that the losses were ranging between 18 and 25%. In Tanzania, we conducted a study on tomato value chains, and we found out that the losses could reach even 44%. This is unacceptable, as I said, and mainly it is because of so many factors, including the fact that the infrastructure is still very basic and it does not suffice the needs. Also, there is also an aspect of technologies that are used in post-harvest handling. They are still traditional technologies and they contribute to a lot of losses. And also the issue of training and capacity building is another aspect which is contributing to these losses.
What impact has the COVID-19 pandemic had on food security on the continent?
So there have been a lot of issues that has to do with the restrictions in movements which had been imposed by many governments as part of the efforts to combat the pandemic. So at farm level, this has had a lot of impact with regard to input supply, labor availability, and as well as services which are normally provided to farmers by extension workers. In addition to that, there have been also a challenge to do with the market access, but also to buy some goods which are important for the agricultural activities from the market. So these markets have been, during this period, and especially when the problem was at its peak, a lot of countries closed their borders and movements even within the countries were restricted, and therefore farmers could not sell timely their crops or their produce to the market, and this led to a lot of problems because remember, these farmers also don't have the technologies we say that are required for reduction of food loss. For example, they don't have the capacity to handle their crops, to add value and so forth. And therefore, they just brought their crops back home, and this led to a huge amount of crops being lost.
In parts of sub-Saharan Africa, up to 60% of the people working in agriculture are women. Sarah Mayanja, a researcher at the International Potato Center, tells Michael how gender and food systems interact.
Yes, we've done a bit of research on gender integration in the food value chain. From real-life experiences last year in the lockdown, we saw a depression of producer prices for fresh food coming from the farmers. And this was mainly because when the food came onto the market, buyers did not have the ability to buy the food in the quantities that they desired because they didn't have access to transportation. And so we also saw major losses of crops at farm and market levels. And there was a loss of morale at the farm level. And in the next season, there was low production because many farmers then did not have the money to procure the inputs. But most of all, these losses, even when they happened, there was a lot of effect on women because, for example, at the market level, women had to sleep in the markets, and so the food security in their homes was compromised. The mobility of many of the women actors was curtailed, and this had an effect on their ability to access input and output markets. And there was also the effect on domestic violence, which really scaled up, and this had also a big effect on food security in Uganda.
Next, I'll be speaking to Kaleli Muli, a farmer from Kenya, who, I should add, has also had experience farming in Swaziland. Yeah, personally, Kaleli, what experience have you had as a farmer with pre-harvest and post-harvest loss?
As a farmer, with the pre-harvest loss has really come in two ways. One is pests and diseases, and also with the climate. The rain patterns have really been quite dramatic. So a lot of losses where we find that the crop is not maturing because there's no sufficient rainfall, and even the places where we irrigate, you have to use a lot of much power to be able to irrigate, and therefore at the end of the day, we harvest quite little than what we expect. So the COVID pandemic has really affected us because initially we had all or many food outlets closed. So hotels are closed, restaurants are closed, and the people going out to the markets are closed, the open air markets were closed. So produce that was already planted and it's on the schedule of planting for any small scale farmer or middle scale farmer. So all that produce, or most of it, went to waste. So you'll find that vegetables like cabbages, spinach, and the like, or even carrots, we had to feed them to animals. Now, those who did not have connections for export, it was just really tough for everyone. And then really changing the strategy in terms of where and how to sell. And this is where you could find that people will take wagons, or some who can hire vehicles and have the cars on the roadside with the fruits or the vegetables, and everybody passing by, they can be able to sell them.
Kaleli, what do you think can be done to boost food security on the continent?
To boost food security in the continent is one of those that's the elephant in the room, actually. So you find that many farmers have traditional ways of farming, and these are quite inefficient. And with proper training and capacity building, you'll find that some of the losses that we talk about will be able to minimize them once more knowledge is there. And actually, knowledge, I will describe it in two parts. So we have the technical knowledge, or the science of it, and also the art of it. So once the two are combined with the science and the art of farming, then the capacity is really well built. we need to eliminate some of the individuals or some of the hurdles in between, and one of them is the middlemen or the people who come to broker in between. Those ones really affect the pricing systems for the African farmer. And if the government can be able to do that, to eliminate that, but mostly with farmers in groups, then they can be able to speak in one voice and have a huge bargaining power in selling their produce. So farming needs to be given the attention that it needs, and because farmers are really looked down upon. I can give an example of myself when I graduated with my Bachelor of Science in Agriculture, and my friends will laugh quite a lot because I was a farmer and ask me, "Oh, do you know how to drive a tractor?" So people don't really understand that farming is really a science, and a science not necessarily you have to go to a university to learn it, but it's a science that you acquire through practice. It's an art that you acquire through practice. And then for those who need more assistance, then the capacity building by the private sector and the government can be able to make a huge difference. And then farming in Africa is, I would say, is really unlimited at this point in time.
Back to Joseph Mpagalile from the Food and Agriculture Organization.
Joseph, part of your work has involved looking at the role of mechanization in food production in Africa. What role, if any, does mechanization have in reducing food loss?
So to start with, when we talk about mechanization, we are really talking about the use of tools, equipment, and machinery, which could reduce drudgery and enhance efficiency in agricultural production systems. But when you come to operations such as harvesting, post-harvest handling, storage, agro-processing, all these operations could be done well with the mechanization services or mechanization operations. So if you go, for example, in the rice farming, then mechanization in terms of machinery such as harvesters, reapers, threshers, all those reduce the drudgery that farmers would have, and also they increase the efficiency of the operation, and also they help to maintain the quality of the produce that is coming from the field. We normally promote small equipment that women and the youth could use to add value to their crops. An example, for example, is a milling machines for producing flour. These are all over the continent, and this is an example of a piece of mechanization equipment that could help a lot to reduce food loss that we are experiencing in the continent. So the role of mechanization should be seen hand in hand with the effort to reduce post-harvest losses that, as I said earlier, different countries, partners going towards it as we move forward. Yeah.
And we'll be back next week with the second episode in our 3-part mini-series, Agri-Africa. Over the course of our Agri-Africa series, we won't be including our Q&A section. But keep sending in your questions and we'll have our experts answer them in the following episodes. Send a voice message via WhatsApp to +254 799 042 513. Today's program was produced by Harrison Lewis. The editor was Jackie Opara-Fotoye with reporting from Michael Kaloki. Africa Science Focus is produced by SciDevNet and distributed in association with your local radio station. I'm Sally Amutabi. See you again next week. This program was funded by the European Journalism Centre through the European Development Journalism Grants Programme with support from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.